If you've ever felt limited by the options to customize your header inside the customizer in the GeneratePress theme, then I have just the solution for you. Thanks to my buddy Taylor Deusen, I now have a code snippet that will hook in the GeneratePress menu inside of any kind of element. This means we can build out our entire headers using the block editor and all the cool features that come along with it. In this video, I'm going to show you how I created my favorite header of all time using this method. It really doesn't take a whole lot of work. We can hook in the navigation and we learn a couple other nifty tricks along the way. So if that sounds like something interesting for you, then stick around and let's get started. So this whole idea actually starts with this tiny little code snippet that was provided by Taylor Deusen. If you don't know Taylor, he's got a website called Snippet Club that has all kinds of awesome things like this. I'm always picking his brain and he's always adding to that collection, and there's tons of his code running through all of my websites. So here, what this code is actually doing is just grabbing the GeneratePress navigation and giving you the ability to add it via a shortcode. So we're going to be able to add the GeneratePress navigation through this shortcode GP_nav. Now, you might be asking, why would we want to do that? Well, if we want to build out a header inside of GeneratePress elements, then we're going to have a way to bring a menu in. The core menu block is not something I've really got along with too well, so to be able to bring in the GeneratePress navigation is going to be a whole lot better for my setup. So go ahead and grab this code from the video description below, stick this inside of a snippet, and then we can jump in and start building out our header. I guess before that, we should take a look at what this header looks like by default. Here on this page, I'm just using the menu straight out of GeneratePress, so I've set all this up in the customizer as far as the font sizes and the colors and things like that. All of that is pretty standard, but we're about to override that with an element. So what we'll do is we'll go here to Elements, and then we'll click Add New Element and change this to a block element. We'll give it the title of Header, and over on the right-hand side under Element Type, we want to change this to Site Header, and we want to choose the entire site. So this will set this up to be our header for the entire website. So now if I refresh, we should see the header's gone because this element is blank, but now we know that this is actually overriding what we set up in the header inside of the theme. So I'm just going to start building this out. We'll need a container, and I'm going to do an inner container here. As you've probably seen in my videos before, I do have some global styles set up with some default padding and things like that. I do want to make this a little bit smaller, so I'm just going to go with 4 pixels of padding on the top and bottom. Now let's go ahead and pop open the list view here because it's going to get a little wild inside of this and it doesn't all render properly on the back end, so you're going to have to use your imagination a little bit, and I will label a lot of these blocks as we go along the way. In fact, let's just go ahead and jump in here, and under this block label, we're just going to call this wrapper, and we're going to call this section just so we know where we're at. So inside of this header, we basically need 2 sections. We need a left-hand side and a right-hand side. So inside this wrapper, I'm just going to go ahead and add a container. I'm going to press Command-Shift-D to duplicate that, and now we have 2 containers. Over here on the left side, I'm going to call this nav left, and over on the right side, I'm going to call this nav right, just so we can keep things straight. Now what we want to do for this wrapper is change its display to flex. So we'll change that to flex, and now we can see these went next to each other, and we want to do space between, which will push this one all the way to the left and the other one all the way to the right. So inside this nav left container, we need 2 things. First, we need the logo. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the logo from my media library. And then the second thing is this little sale banner. So underneath the logo, I'm just going to press enter. And what we'll do is we'll type in Labor Day Sale, save 20% through September 5th. All right, so now that we got that text and this logo, what I need to do is put them next to each other. So to do that, we can just grab this nav left column, and we can change the display from default to flex. That will put them next to each other. We can align the items in the center, which will center align them there. And then we can make some tweaks to the styling of this headline. So first thing I want to do is go ahead and change this over to a GenerateBlocks headline. We'll change the tag back to a paragraph. I want to get rid of any of the default bottom margin because I want to keep this right in line. And I want to make this text quite a bit smaller. I'm going to go ahead and go with one of my presets for body extra small, which makes this text pretty tiny, but in the context of this design, I think this looks pretty good. So what we actually have with this text is kind of a pill shape design. So I'm going to go in here and give this some padding to start out with, maybe 4 on the top and 16 on each of the sides. And then we're going to go down to the border. We'll link all these values together. We'll give it a 1 pixel border and we'll change it to a light gray color. Lastly, to give it that pill shape, I'm just going to go with 100 pixels for the border radius, just so we kind of have those round edges there. Now you can see because of the line height on this font, it actually looks like there's more padding on the bottom than it does the top. So I'm just going to go in here on the bottom and maybe change that to 2 pixels, and that evens it out visually. Now we do need to link this. I don't have a real URL to send it to, so I'm just going to put a pound symbol in there, and we can see this is now linked. Inside of my starter site, I actually have a class already set up called no-ul, which takes out the text decoration on any links. I'm not going to want this link underlined here in the navigation, so I'm just going to go ahead and add that no-ul class. All you need to do to set that up is just create a class inside of your customizer, inside your child theme, that just sets the text decoration to none. All right, so we're almost done with this left-hand side here. The only thing we need to add is some gap in between the logo and this text. So here on the nav left, I'm going to scroll back up to our flex settings, and I'm going to change this column gap to something like 24 pixels. So now we have a little separation there. All right, it's time to focus on this right-hand side now. So what we need inside of this right nav are 2 different things. One is the shortcode that's going to bring in the GeneratePress menu, and then we're going to build out some buttons using blocks. So inside this right nav, I'm going to go ahead and add 2 containers as well. So I added this first one, and we'll duplicate it. Again, we're going to want to go to this nav right, and we're going to change this display to flex, so these are next to each other. And I know we're going to want some gap, so I'll go ahead and put 24 pixels of gap in here just to get us started. In this container, we're actually going to make this our GP nav. So I'm going to go ahead and label this just so we know this is going to be GP nav. And this other container are going to be our nav buttons. So inside this GP nav, what we need to add is a shortcode. So I'm going to add the shortcode block, and this shortcode is GP_nav, and close those brackets. And this is not going to render in the back end, so we're just going to have to kind of use our imagination here to picture the menu here. Of course, we'll be able to see it on the front end. All right, in our nav buttons container, we want to go ahead and add 2 things. The first one is just a link. So I'm going to use a heading. I'm going to change that to paragraph, and I'm going to do log in. And then next to that, I want to add a button. So I'm going to go ahead and add a button block. I'm going to go ahead and give it a link here. And I'm going to change this to one of my global styles, which here under the primary, this one has some rounded corners and things like that. I do want to match this color to this logo I grabbed. I don't have that inside of my theme yet, so I'm just going to grab a color swatch here. We'll go ahead and grab this blue color, and I'm going to dump that in the background. And I guess for the hover, we can go ahead and use that blue that I already had. This also has a slight stroke on it. So I'm going to go up here to my borders, and I'm going to change the normal border to the blue color I just sampled, and then the one from my library for hover. Now this button should say get all access. And of course, again, we want to get these 2 things next to each other. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and grab that nav buttons container. And again, change this to display flex. We want to center these items. And then we want to make sure we put some gap in between them. We'll just stay consistent with our 24 pixels since that's what we've been using. We can see the login text here is not behaving. That's because it has some default bottom margin from the theme. So I'm just going to go ahead and change that to 0, and that should be aligned now. Now we're getting pretty close to having this layout here. There's still a lot of tweaks we need to do, but at this point, I'm going to go ahead and update this. We'll refresh, and now we have our new header in place. Now, obviously, I can see a few things that are not consistent right now, like this text is a different size than the rest of my navigation. I want to put some kind of separator in between these, and we can see if I just start squeezing this in, we're going to run into lots of issues here. So let's tackle these things one by one. I think first I want to go ahead and take care of getting all these fonts the same size. I've actually set up these fonts inside of my child theme with some variables. So after I add the link to this login text like that, and add my no-ul utility class, scroll down here, advanced, no-ul. What we'll do is we'll change the size of these pieces of text to match. So this is actually going to be my body small. And for the get all access button, I can do the same thing here under font size. I'm just going to paste in the variable I have, which is this variable FS headline body small. Accidentally did extra small. So if we update that now and refresh on the front end, we should see all of these are a much more appropriate size. Now we do have this blue color coming here from our default link colors here on this link as well as this link, and we want these to match the rest of the navigation. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab this and we'll go down to our colors. Under link, I'm gonna choose this surface 70 and surface 90, and we'll do the same thing for this one, the link surface 70 and surface 90, and we'll hit update and refresh again on the front end. Those look quite a bit better now. So I think next what we'll do is we'll tackle giving some extra space in between this button section and the navigation section with a little divider. So to do that, what I'm going to do is actually grab this nav buttons container, and I'm going to give it some extra padding. Now I know I want to have the 24 that's typically in between all these items, which I've been doing, but the actual list items here have a 20 pixel padding on them. So together, what I actually need is 44 pixels of padding inside of this container. Again, it's kind of hard to visualize on the back end, but once you see it on the front end, hopefully it'll make sense. And then we just want to add a 1 pixel border, and we'll want to do that on the left side. And we'll make this a nice light gray color. So now if we update that, we can see we have our nice little border across these two items. All right, so the next thing we need to do is start tackling some of these responsive settings. So what I want to do first, let's go ahead and just open the inspector, and I'm going to open up the customizer in another tab here because we're going to have to start writing some CSS. The first thing I want to do is just get rid of this sale banner once it causes our menu to go kind of wacky. So using the responsive mode here, I can see that at about 12:17, it's okay. And when I get to 12:10, it's pretty bad. So I'm going to say maybe that 12:13 point is where I need to just get rid of this little sale banner. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and grab this headline back here, and we're going to give this a class. So we'll call it nav sale banner. Go ahead and update that. We'll go ahead and refresh the customizer here so we can see that change in the class, and we'll do nav sale banner, and I'm going to do a display of none. Now you can see that made it disappear, but actually what we want to do is put this inside of a media query so at a certain breakpoint it disappears. So let's refresh ourselves. We had 12:12 as the breakpoint where we wanted to get rid of it. So we're going to do @media, and then we'll do a max width 1212 pixels. We'll open our curly brackets, and we'll go ahead and close them down here. So now if we hit publish and refresh the front end, we can see at 12:12 it's gone, but at 12:13 it reappears. So this just means as the devices get smaller, that will go away. So we're looking pretty good there, and this tablet version looks pretty good with the buttons. Of course, we're gonna hit a point right about here where the buttons start to stack and things aren't looking so good. So we need to take the same principle of how we just hid that sale banner, and we need to hide these buttons on the side. So we're gonna go ahead and hop back into the editor here. We're gonna go to our nav buttons container, and we're gonna scroll down and give it a class. So here in the additional CSS, we're gonna do nav buttons as our class, and we'll go ahead and copy that and update this. Now inside the customizer, we can refresh here and go to our additional CSS again. So what we're going to want to do is go ahead and paste in that nav buttons, and again we're going to do a display none. Obviously that's going to make them disappear here because we haven't put them inside of our media query yet. So we're going to do @media max width, and we have to decide a value here for when we want those buttons to disappear. So they look pretty good here, and they break right there, but honestly even before they break, it looks like this menu's too close to the logo. So for me, I don't think I really want to get it any smaller than 590 before these need to disappear. So I'm going to go ahead in here and put 589 pixels. We'll have to open and close our curly brackets and go ahead and hit publish. Now if I refresh on this end, right here it's fine, but as soon as we go to 589, those buttons disappear. So this means that now our menu's fully responsive here and looks really good at every single breakpoint, but we have one more problem we definitely need to solve. The login button and the sign up buttons are obviously pretty important to this website, even if you're on a mobile device, and those aren't in the primary navigation. So we need to figure out a way to put these two links inside our navigation once they disappear from the media query we just wrote. To do this is actually pretty simple. We'll jump back into the customizer here, we'll go to menus, and we'll go to our primary menu. What we need to do is go ahead and add those two items to our primary menu. Of course, this is just a demo site, so I don't have those pages set up. I'm just going to go ahead and put login and get all access as some just custom links here. And we're going to give them a class. So we're going to say nav mobile only as the class. I'll go ahead and copy that. We'll go down to this get all access and we'll paste that in. Now what we can do is go back into our CSS and write a new rule that says nav mobile only. Again, we're going to do a display of none. That's going to hide them out from the menu, but we want to make sure that they are displayed once we get to the mobile breakpoint. Now we don't want to use the default GeneratePress mobile breakpoint. We want to make sure these show as soon as we're hiding them from this desktop or tablet view. So what we're going to do is just write another media query, but instead of doing max width this time, we're going to do the inverse, which is min width. And we can match that same 589 pixels. We can open and close our curly brackets. And what this is going to do is go ahead and show those menu items once the buttons disappear here. So you can see when we have our buttons here, if we open our mobile menu, the login and get all access aren't there. But as soon as we break this down and it gets to where the buttons disappear, we open our menu. Now we have our login and get all access inside this navigation. So that's a great little way to show and hide these things inside and outside the navigation. And I've got to be honest, this has to be one of my favorite headers that I've ever built. And it's really only possible because now I can hook in that GeneratePress menu right here into an element made with GenerateBlocks. Once again, a huge shout out to Taylor Deusen for this little snippet of code. If you've ever tried to work with the core navigation block before, you'll know what a huge pain it is. So to me, this wasn't even possible until I was able to hook that GeneratePress navigation into an element. And thanks to Taylor's snippet, I was able to do that pretty simply. I've left a link down to Taylor's Snippet Club website down in the video description below. You can find some great free tutorials on there, but what I have is actually the paid subscription, and it's well worth the price of admission. Now, I would love to see what you end up doing using this tutorial. I'm sure you can come up with all kinds of creative ways to really spice up your header designs, and I would love to see exactly what you do. So make sure if you use this, you come back to this video and leave a link down in the comments below. Now, if you got something from this video, I would really appreciate a thumbs up. That helps spread this far and wide. And if you want to make sure to catch me in my next one, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you then.